Alright, every action anywhere is repeated everywhere throughout the universe. This is simply the modern version of a holographic universe. Every fragment or piece or whatever you want to call it, fractal of the universe has within it all the information of the entire universe. That's why everything in God's eyes is, from God's perspective, is omnipresent. Alright. As a consequence, harmonic centers of the same measure of desire extend their actions outward from their centers toward other harmonic centers. Harmonic explosions of equal measure thus fill all space in God's omnipresent universe. Outward explosions which meet each other cannot be spheres, for all space must be filled. Tennis balls crushed together become cubes by gradually flattening where they meet at 6 points on curved surfaces. Likewise, outer explosions flatten into 6 planes of cubes. Okay, same thing. Circles become spheres, becomes cubes, cubes become spheres, because all of space is full. It's not empty, like Newton would have you believe, or I should say Einstein would have you believe. So you can't have space full of round spheres, because where they touch, they're going to leave gaps. So where they touch, they actually work together and they flatten and they connect and they become the magnetic space geometry known as a cube, or a cubic wave form. And you can kind of see this here in these drawings, these symbols here. Outward and inward explosions are resisted at their maximum in the direction of the 6 points where spheres meet. They are consequently deflected to 8 points of at least resistance, which become diagonals of cubes instead of radii of spheres. 8 directions of two-way expressed force are thus generated, which become the basis of the octave wave. Outward-inward explosions projected through each other develop two opposed pressures. The outward direction divides its potential by expanding it radially. The inward direction multiplies it by compressing it radially. Thus, the two opposite plus or minus equilibrium conditions are produced, which motivate the electric universe of two-way motion. Give to it its heartbeat and produce all effects of illusion caused by the interchange of the two conditions of matter. Okay, I know that's a mouthful. Again, sort of re-edifying the same thing. You can see here that when spheres come together, they flatten and they form a cube. And it's done through pressure. So the electric universe is basically molded into matter based on different pressure conditions. And then here's, again, another cubic waveform. And you can see in the next visual how the cathode rays, the cathode edges, are moving towards the center of stillness where they were first formed and born, and then from there the center is still moving more outward towards the end of the cathode rays. And this is again that breathing or pulsation, that inhale exhale of sphere and cube to create the universe, to create what we call motion, light, matter. Alright, moving on. Pairs of interchanging opposed conditions are born from each other and become each other as a consequence of that interchange. As opposites in nature are likewise born. The cube and the sphere are two opposites of form from which all forms of things are born. They are the only forms ever created, being father and mother of all forms. The point here is that all of the Platonic solids, all of our magnetic space geometries, all of our form, all of our geometry, the dodecahedron, the icosahedron, the tetrahedron, and so on, all of these geometric forms are originally born from the cube and the sphere. That's the original form of all forms. The sphere and the cube both manifest the cosmic principle of balance. Their position in light waves is the one balanced position in the wave where compression and expansion have ceased to oppose each other, which is at wave amplitude, known as the crest and the trough. Okay, that's the reason why it gives birth to all form, is because it's actually the universe's way of making the most perfect balance, which is the cube and the sphere. That creates crest and trough of all waves in any form: light waves, radio waves, gamma rays, X-rays, any kind of rays. They're all born of this magnetic space geometry of the cubic waveform. Carbon and sodium chloride are good examples of true cube crystallization. Likewise, their atomic units are true spheres. Sodium iodine or sodium bromide are not crystallized in true cube because of their unbalanced positions near, but not upon, the plane of wave amplitude. So he's basically saying that geometric forms eventually become all forms. They become the minerals, they become, earth, air, water, fire, so on and so on and so on. The cube and the sphere are one, being two opposite phases of the same thing. The cube is the sphere extended to black coldness, while the sphere is the cube contracted to white incandescence. Every true sphere in every light wave is an incandescent sun, regardless of its dimension. Proletating spheres, such as our sun, are becoming incandescent inward toward their centers, while oblating spheres, such as our planets, are becoming cold inward toward their centers. The cube is born from the sphere to fulfill the desire of the Creator to produce form by projecting light from incandescence toward the cold dark of heaven. Conversely, the sphere is born from the cube to fulfill the other desire for oneness by reprojecting cold dark from the heavens to light in the seed. Okay, that's pretty heavy. I don't have much of a good visual here, but the point is that when we look at a planet or a star, what we have to realize is that it's not just sitting there emanating light from within. It's a balance. It's actually taking in the darkness around itself and harmonizing and transforming that energy into light. And this is a expression and it's a giving and a re-giving. It's an expression, it's a folding and an unfolding. It's also a gravitation and a radiation all at the same time. And this is the hard part for people to get, is that this balance, this equilibrium is what we live in. It's what we're here to experience all the time. Okay, the cube is born from the sphere to fulfill the desire of the Creator to produce form by projecting light from incandescence toward the cold dark of heavens. The creation of all form of matter is an eternal interchange between the father light of incandescent spheres and the mother light of cold cubes. All forms are born in the direction of the coldness of space and are voided in the direction of incandescence. Every creating body is set out into space from its crucible in the sun to cool into the form appropriate to its extension from the sun. That is one half of the cyclic journey of every body from the sun and back to it. The other half of the cycle is the return of the sun to void the body of its form for the purpose of acquiring a new body. Every cycle of motion is a journey from heat to cold and back again. All bodies are formed by freezing and voided by melting. The freezing and melting points of all bodies are dependent upon their respective densities and electric conditioning. So, just like gravitation and radiation is saying that a planet is birthed from its source, the sun, and it moves away in circular orbits in a vortex cone, and as it moves away, it's going through this process of cooling down. In that process of cooling down, it's actually constantly balancing itself through radiation and gravitation, which is like breathing. And eventually, it disappears completely as it cools down and literally becomes the darkness of space, which is pure energy. Body from the sun and back to it. The other half of the cycle is the return of the sun to void the body of its form for the purpose of acquiring a new body. Every cycle of motion is a journey from heat to cold and back again. All bodies are formed by freezing and voided by melting. The freezing and melting points of all bodies are dependent upon their respective densities and electric conditioning. So, just like gravitation and radiation, saying that a planet is birthed from its source, the sun, and it moves away in circular orbits in a vortex cone, and as it moves away, it's going through this process of cooling down. In that process of cooling down, it's actually constantly balancing itself through radiation and gravitation, which is like breathing, and eventually it disappears completely as it cools down and literally becomes the darkness of space, which is pure energy.
The upper part, the part which is above the earth, cannot subsist without that interchange between its counterpart below the plane of zero curvature, practically, which is underneath the earth, which we call its roots. They interchange so that the nourishment of one can, and one gives to the other, and they each give to each other, and you breathe out into space, and which is the other side of your curved equator, because around you constantly are these spherical layers of equal potential. You breathe out into them. You discharge your body and you charge space, and then you breathe back again, and you can't live unless you do that. You have to interchange always with that which is on the other side of the equator. You're surrounded. You're surrounded by the equipotential curved equators, and you're divided from your plane of zero curvature equator by your own roots. You must understand what I mean, and even if there are animals and people walking around, their roots, they're just the same. They cannot subsist, live without the sustenance come out from the earth. And everything that is born of the earth, is born with its roots extending under the earth. And that means animal, mineral, and vegetable. It means animal and vegetable, and no matter what it is, it grows and expresses life. It grows from the earth outward, and its roots are underneath the earth. And I explained to the class here one day that any animal life that is born of the womb of a mother, the womb of the mother nourishes the body for a certain period of time through what is known as the placenta. Until the child is born, the placenta is then no use. Now that placenta is the temporary roots of the human being. It is underground, it's always underground because the mother has to take food from underground to make that placenta. That's the roots of a living animal that is born without roots, an animal that can locomote itself. Now let's see them. Will you speak of the cube and the sphere? Now, what? Oh, is that sufficient for you? All right, because the cube and the sphere are the basic and fundamentals from which an appearance and disappearance take place. And the appearance taking place from any one point is repeated everywhere. If a good illustration of that is this. Supposing you appear as light and as an invisible point without a body here, and then say your desire to appear, and you breathe out, but now you keep your breath surrounded by a balloon, for instance. You fill that balloon with your breath. And the next one and the next one of the harmonics does likewise. All breathe out. And they fill little balloons with them. And finally, pretty soon, those balloons touch each other on 6 sides. Well, they keep breathing out. Then they've got to expand. There's no place to go except to the corners of cubes. So all space is filled with the expansion of the decentrated force of nature. All space. And so a cube is the all of space, and that's the limit you can go. If you fill those balloons with all the air that you can compress in them, you couldn't possibly get any more in them. They'd explode. And so then when you retract, you let the air all out, and you breathe it into you again to disappear. The cubes have disappeared. The zero condition takes away from them. Will you speak on cosmic ray? And another question, what is the secret of the 30 octaves between sound and light? No, 30 octaves between sound and light.
What does science mean by that?
Science? Does science say?
Yes. There are 30 octaves that non-plus. Science between sound and light. What is
it? You go ask them. I don't know. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. There aren't any octaves in nature in excess of the 9 octaves of nature. And between light and sound, they're the same things. A light is produced by compression, and it's at the maximum of its wave, it produces a sphere. And sound is produced in the same way by producing a wave vibration. And at the amplitude, you produce the sound that is desired. No other place upon it except that just one little point on the wire that is vibrating of a violin string or a harp. Just one point that you hear the completed sound. All the way up to that you hear a siren sort of growing up to it. If you could delay that sound instead of hearing it in 1,000th of a second, if you could spread it out over a minute, you'd hear just a sound siren growing until suddenly the keynote, the A or the B or the C note is produced. Same thing with the sun. We have all of the gases and the other elements that are the rings that are being wound up through the until suddenly, zing, in the sky you see a sun. The rings are all then pulled up into the sun. The siren sound of the light that is accumulating has taken place in an incandescent sun. And that incandescent sun is exactly synonymous with the A-string sound of a harp, accepting the difference in its characteristics. The sound, the A-string on the harp is not so hot, but it's hot. It's an intense temperature right there, caused by the multiplication of vibration all the way up that harp string. That's the hottest point there is in that vicinity. And there's not incandescence there for the same reason, that potential isn't high enough. But the A string that's on the cosmic harp, that's struck by the vibration that produces the sun, is merely a multiplication of that same wave that produced the sound of the A string of the harp. Nature has not two different ways of creating anything. Created only by waves. There is nothing in the nature but waves of motion. Waves multiply in the direction of their amplitudes, and they divide on the way down, back to silence of the zero from which it came. That's life and death, and the resurrection on the other side of the equator, when the same A note of the harp string reproduces itself again as another A note. They're so fast we think of them as continuous, because they're so fast. But there's a black gap of silence between each one of those. Every time it passes the zero plane of silence from which it has appeared, it is silent again. Then it appears on the other side. The same siren sound accumulate, multiply into the A tone that you're after. So it is with the sun. The sun dies in the same way, but it depolarizes itself down to the zero of its own plane of zero curvature, reproduces itself in the black hole of space on the other that's all been waiting for it. For the sun cannot create itself as a single individual. It's multiplied into a duration of billions of years of time without that elastic band on the other side of the hitching post of gravity. And there's another elastic band on the other side pulling it back. It's gone away, extended as far away as it can. The energy bar to extend it is expended. And when it's expended, it has to return what it is borrowed. So there are only the 8 octaves. Will you speak of the cosmic ray? I had promised that I would do that in this lecture, and which extended to too much time. That's a subject that needs very much of a build-up. Needs a build-up of a whole lecture. How can I put that into a few words? Well, I think I can. Let these represent different bodies in space. Let us say this is the Earth over here and this is the Sun. Every one of these bodies in space is in absolute balance with every other body. That balance cannot vary even by 1/1,000,000 of a milligram anywhere in the entirety of the whole universe. Its balance is so perfect that the slightest unbalance is going to be remedied at once, remedied before it began. And so, that everywhere in space, wherever there are bodies in space, they're interchanging their potentials with each other to keep that balance. The radiation of one body reaches out and strikes every other body. We're familiar with the radiation of the sun, but we're not familiar with the countless other means of adjusting the balance of the universe until they get down to such a fine point that which we call the cosmic ray is one of the generators of nature, which is keeping this earth and other things in balance. Now, everything that approaches the earth generates the earth. That is, it adds to its life duration. It charges the earth with its potential. And when there is an overcharge of the earth by an excessive radiation from the sun, such as I described in the lecture yesterday, coming from sunspots, there's an equivalent discharge of the earth to keep that in balance. Now, that everything that approaches the earth to charge it, that we call sun rays or any other kind of rays, arrives in particles, corpuscles. Sunlight rays do not just come down upon the earth as what you might imagine as sun rays. They come down in electrical bodies, all centripetal. As I've explained to you, they must change their direction, and as they're coming radially toward a center of gravity, they are multiplying their force. They are doing this as the sun ray is coming here. Let's imagine this is just a little particle of sun ray that's coming down. It's doing this.
Hello, this is Ryan McMahon. I'm going to be reading from Walter Russell's book, The Secret of Light. And the topic here is how light moves. And he says that light cannot be seen by the senses of the human being. So, let's consider what he says. It's pretty interesting. Light cannot be seen. It can only be known. Light is still. The sense of sight cannot respond to stillness. That which the eyes feel and believe to be light is but wave motion simulating the idea of light. Like all things else in this electric wave universe, the idea of light cannot be reproduced. Electric waves simulate idea only. They do not become idea. When man sees the light of the sun, he believes that he is actually seeing light when the nerves of his eyes are but feeling
the intense, rapid, shortwave vibrations of the kind of wave motion which he senses as incandescent light. The intensely vibrant electric current mirrored into the senses of the eyes fairly burns them. They cannot stand the high vibration. The eyes would be destroyed by such a vibration, but light would not be the cause of that destruction. Fast motion, simulating light, would be the cause. It would be like sending a high voltage electric current over a wire so fine that the current would burn it out. Man likewise cannot see darkness. The nerves of his eyes, which sense motion, slow down to a rate of vibration which he can no longer feel. Man is so accustomed to the idea that he actually sees light in various intensities, illuminating various substances to greater or lesser degree, that it is difficult for him to realize that his own senses are but acting as mirrors to reflect various intensities of wave motion. But that is all that's happening. Every electrically conditioned thing in nature reflects the vibrations of every other thing. To fulfill its desire to synchronize its vibrations with every other thing. All matter is the motion of light. All motion is expressed in waves. All light waves are mirrors which reflect each other's conditions unto the furthermost star. This is an electrically conditioned wave universe. All wave conditions are forever seeking oneness. For this reason, all sensation responds to all other sensation. Much controversy has arisen to whether light is corpuscular, as Newton claimed it to be, or a wave. There is much evidence in favor of both theories. It is both. Light is expressed by motion. All motion is wave motion. All waves are expressed by fields of equal and opposite pressures of two-way motion. The entire volume within a wave field is filled by the two opposite expressions of motion. The positive expression, which compresses light into solids, and the negative expression, which expands it into space surrounding solids. All space within wave fields is curved. Curvature ends at planes of zero curvature, which bound all wave fields. These boundary planes of omnipresent magnetic light act as mirrors to reflect all curvature into all other wave fields in the universe, and as fulcrums from which motion in one wave field is universally repeated. All matter is wave motion. Together, these constitute what we call matter and space. It has been difficult to conceive light as being purely corpuscular, for light is presumed to fill all space. Space is not empty. It is full of wave motion. Corpuscles of matter are one half of wave cycles of light. Space is the other half. There need be no mystery as to whether light is corpuscular or a wave, for waves of motion which simulate the light and darkness of space are all there is. The light and motion of solid matter and of gaseous matter of space differs only in volume and condition. Water of earth is compressed into small volume, while water of the heavens is expanded thousands of times in volume. Each condition is the opposite half of the cycle of water. Water vapor is water turned inside out. It again becomes water by turning outside in. Expansion, contraction sequences result from this process. Okay, might want to re-listen to that. It's interesting language. But what I get out of it is that, first and foremost, the universe is electric and is not atomic. So, Walter Russell, Victor Schauberger, Nikola Tesla, D.B. Larson, all these scientists were correct. Our modern physics needs to be taken off the drawing table, basically, and reworked. with the concept of the electric universe being at the forefront. The other thing I get is that everything that we sense is a reflection of what's actually happening. And we call that reflection light. But we have no other way to work with it but through our senses. And then on top of that, we need to always remember that we have more than 5 senses. There's 2 more for sure. There is intuition, and there's also imagination. All right, Walter Russell, The Secret of Light.
Okay. The sphere is the clay of earths, the light of suns, and the formlessness of seed. It is the womb from which the clay of earth extends into the cube-bound heavens to expand into form. And it is the tomb within which all form is voided for re-giving to the heavens as a new form. Every form in nature is either becoming a cube or a sphere, or is a section of either one. Complex bodies are multiples of spheres of matter surrounded by multiples of cubes of space in multiples of wave fields. All crystal shapes are sections of cubes. Their shapes are determined by their position in their wave field. The cubes of space are wave fields which bound all interchanging motion between the 2 conditions within it. Motion cannot pass through these planes, but can be reflected symmetrically back to or extended symmetrically toward the center of adjoining wave fields. Okay, more heavy language. But you can see here that there's all these different geometric forms. And the point is that they're not all perfect. They're not all perfectly balanced. They're going through a morphogenic resonance. They're going through a change, a transformation. And we just see them. Certain times we see them, whether they be a mineral or a crystal or a molecule or whatever form they're in. The point is that they're always going through this movement to become the unique and beautiful shape that they are. Just re-edifying what I was saying earlier, that all of our geometric forms are born from the cube and the sphere exchange, or the cubic wave field. Within each cube field is the curved universe of 2-way light illusion and beyond, to the farthest reaches of space. It is repetition of illusion from wave field to wave field at the rate of 186,000 miles per second. That is the speed in which every action, reaction, anywhere repeats itself everywhere. The illusion of motion gives rise to the belief that light travels. Same thing. Earlier I said that light is an illusion and light is actually not traveling, but the cubic waveform is regenerating itself next to itself constantly in stillness. Wave field boundary planes of zero curvature insulate all effects of motion which take place within it from every other wave field. Centering the wave field is the incandescent sphere which mates it. The potential of the entire field is divided equally between its centering sphere of multiplied matter and the surrounding space divided matter. Each mate of each wave field in the universe is balanced with its opposite mate, even to the weight of 1 electron. The reason why the centering sphere is of high potential and its surrounding space is of low potential is due to the difference in volume. The centering sphere may be a few thousand miles in diameter and its surrounding space many millions of miles in diameter, yet they are equal potential for potential, but unequal volume for volume. Okay, that's a key point. It's basically saying that within the cubic wave field, they actually are equally balanced in every way except volume. Neither one of these mates could sustain its separateness of condition unless it consistently interchanged to give all of itself to the other, alternatively in repetitive cycles. Spheres must give to cubes of space by breathing out to discharge themselves and charge space. Space must then re-give to spheres by breathing out from itself to discharge itself and recharge spheres. Each short cycle of interchange is accumulated into a longer life-death cycle in which solids entirely disappear into space and space interchanges its potential to become solids. The principle constitutes the forever inside-out, outside-in turnings of nature by means of which all forms sequentially appear, disappear, and reappear. Well, the way in which I would say this is just look at any body. All bodies are dissolvable. The great Giordano Bruno, Hermeticist, basically proved that with his philosophies. If you look at a body, a human body or the body of an animal or any body, eventually it disappears. Its shell becomes, it disintegrates, and whatever it held within itself becomes renewed energy for the greater good. And this is what he's saying, is that all bodies dissolve and then reappear in a new, refined, energetic state. The inbreathing of spheres generates low potential into high. The generative process of nature is gravitation. The outbreathing of spheres radiates high potential into low. The degenerative process of nature is radiation. So there you go. Gravitation is generating, radiation is degenerating. It's an energetic exchange of life and death, basically. Multiplication and division are expressed energy into the high and low potential of gravitation, and radiation is made possible by the plan of nature, which causes all actions of nature to extend radially from omnipresent points of magnetic light. Gravitation pulls spirally inward from within to wind light waves into solids to center space. Radiation thus spirals outward to unwind dense solids into space to surround solids. Each is an equal reaction to the other. Each becomes the other sequentially. So it's good to get this. The point is that gravitation is constantly pulling energy into itself and creating white light, incandescent light, and creating matter, creating something solid. At the same time, that solid object is constantly breathing out or radiating. Radiation is expressing the death principle of like letting go of energy as it is transformed. This whole process we see as motion. We see it as life. But when it disappears, it goes back into stillness. Gravitation is the positive electric principle which exerts its pressures centripetally toward the maximum incandescent points of compression in every wave field. It is the father principle of nature, the integrating principle of uphill flow of energy, which forever balances its downward flow. And then you can see the picture here. This is a simple drawing, the mystery of gravitation and radiation. If you just look closely, you can just see that it's not just one spiral, it's two. You have a spiral of white incandescent light being pulled inward towards its center, which is gravitation. And then you also have an expression of a thrust away from its center, which is radiation. And that actually expresses itself as darkness. So this is the classic yin-yang, the dark and the light, the balance, the equilibrium. Radiation is the negative electric principle which exerts its pressure centrifugally. How do I say that? Centripetally is gravitation and centrifugally is radiation. Towards its wave field boundaries, planes of magnetic light. It is the mother principle of nature. The disintegrating principle, downhill flow of energy, which forever balances its uphill flow. There is no center of gravity in nature. The centering light of every mass is still magnetic light. Likewise, the still axis of every vortex is still magnetic light. Now, those are pretty key points to get. This whole cosmology, or this whole Russellian science, you kind of have to look at it and see that, for one, it's a vortex. The solar system is a vortex. It's moving. It's not a two-dimensional pancake model like we've been taught. And it's centered by stillness, because all motion comes from stillness and then goes back to it. So hopefully that comes through as well. This stillness is called still magnetic light. Radiativity then begins its half cycle from that point of rest and ends it on wave-field bounding lanes of magnetic light where gravity began. Radiativity then ceases when its motion ceases. Both gravity and radiativity borrow their power to find balance in rest at the journey's end from the points of rest of their beginnings. They each repay their separate borrowings to the other at every point in their respective journeys. Each thus perpetually voids itself by giving to the other. At each journey's end, each opposite cancels itself out by giving its all to the other. It is then reborn as the other. Everywhere in nature, each action is its own reaction. And then the quote from the Divine Iliad he ends with, "Death gives to life, that life may live, and life gives to death, that death may die." All right, so that's as far as I'm going to go right now. That gives you plenty of stuff to chew on and listen to. Hopefully the language will come through if you listen to this videos, once or twice, more than once. Once you wrap your mind around the language and understand what Walter Russell is saying, the pictures start to come into place. The magnetic space geometries come into place. So, thank you for listening. Please share.